And if I speak of paradise, then I'm speaking of my grandmother, who told me to carry it always on my person, concealed, so no one else would know but me. That way, they can't steal it, she'd say. And if life puts you under pressure, trace its ridges in your pocket, smell its piney scent on your handkerchief, hum its anthem under your breath. And if your stresses are sustained and daily, get yourself to an empty room, be it hotel, hostel, or hovel. Find a lamp and empty your paradise onto a desk. Your white sands, green hills, and fresh fish. Shine the lamp on it like the fresh hope of morning and keep staring at it till you sleep.
Well, it's been a week.
It's been a long week. It's been a week.
I've been thinking about our last conversation a lot. I listened to it like 3-4 times, I think.
I didn't get to hear it this week.
It's a funny one because it's like we sort of skipped to the arguing part before any of us had like a position. It was like we were. It's like
we refresh ourselves and our listeners. What are we arguing about?
Oh yeah, we were arguing the significance of the differences between the examples of Brockhampton and Trio Mondili, these Georgian folk singers. And we were, I had a sort of stark, the experience of going from Trio Mondili into the Brockhampton concert live stream was emotionally like very abrupt. And it seemed to be very much in stark contrast into the way I was feeling it. And I was trying to understand why, and we were all trying to figure out if there's there, if there's any significant difference at all. And it's like one of those things where I think we argued, but we didn't come up with anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It was like sort of an exercise.
It felt like there wasn't a there.
Yeah.
So I think, I was on the side of there was no there. And that's what I kept trying to come back to and point to. Because thinking about the stark contrast in your example, what you're bringing up now, when I say, for example, I'm like, it's 10:30 or 10 o'clock at night, and maybe I got a jazz record on, and I'm about to go to bed, or I got a podcast on, or a meditation going on, and then someone hits me with a last minute note, and I just feel like doing it for some reason. I go to the computer, and it's just something ridiculously loud, or just something completely different than John Coltrane or Bill Evans. It's like, then that's the contrast. Yeah. The contrast is that, not necessarily the subject matter. It's just that there's nothing similar about the two. So it just felt like there was no there.
Yeah, I don't. That's interesting. I mean, taken to extremes, it's like, what if it became? So if we continued on the spectrum from like friendliness and openness to like a kind of state of rumination. Content or song or movie or anything that's sort of expressing or evidence of mental ill health. If you keep going down that spectrum, you get to like simulated suicide over and over and over again, just on loop. And it's like, well, what if that becomes popular?
Or if you get,
it's like, what does that say?
Or you get a way to cope with the feelings that you have, and it's being, I'm really not.
No, I know. That's what
today.
I mean.
With words.
I don't even have a position. Like I just have questions.
Like you find it cathartic to listen to, so you don't actually act upon the feelings. Like that's what these things are for.
Yeah.
That's why I don't know. I don't necessarily understand the loop that you're referring to.
I remember
what was troubling me. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
What was
please.
troubling me about the convo last time, kind of irritating me, was the fact that like it was like an either or.
Yes.
It was like Brockhampton or Trio Mondili, and I think that like that is true, but on a specific attribute, it might be true. But on the whole, we can't say that one is it or not, or whatever it is, because it wasn't clear what we were evaluating, like what attributes we were evaluating them on. I think one of them is clear, which is, or starting to be clear from what you're saying, Spider, which is like, does Brockhampton, is it more depressive lyrically, tonally, and does that have more of a potential to do harm? I guess that would be the attribute we're measuring them versus Trio Mondoli on, one attribute. So does, on the spectrum of songs that do harm, where does Brockhampton fit and where does Trio Mondoli fit? And I think there is a stark contrast between the two. But if it's like another spectrum, like value that the listener gets from listening, or actually, let's not just say value generically, let's say a specific value, like the feel, like a feeling of comfort, let's say, that the listener gets. Maybe they're exactly the same, just for a different audience. So I think we were debating the whole, but we weren't assessing the parts and grading them kind of on the parts, because I think, I think that's kind of why I went in a loop.
What stayed with me, and I didn't get to listen. That makes sense to me, Michael. Sorry, I just want to acknowledge that. What stayed with me after last week, and I didn't, it's the first time in a long time I haven't listened because I was sick in bed at the weekend. I just uploaded it. But what I was kind of intrigued by was, to use the sort of model of the Peter Singer shallow pond thing. If someone is in a place emotionally, let's say someone is in a difficult place, there is a piece of music that reaches out to them and sort of says, I'm where you're at. I am dead inside. Drake, I'm also, numb to the world, right? Mm-hmm. Or there's a piece of music that lifts them up, that elevates them, brings them to a higher truth, maybe something more universal. So it's kind of back to the word thing, the empowering, enabling, so that's certain. And I certainly listened to a bunch of music that indulged my adolescence when I was younger. And along with that, what we explored a little bit, I think on mic or maybe off, was the people around it, that I sort of indulged the defeatist kind of ideas and self-indulgent ideas around it, like the kind of petulant rock star-y stuff. Not that I was acting like a petulant rock star, but So what stayed with me about the conversation was this idea that some music is universally a hand that reaches into the shallow pond and tries to elevate you with melody that's timeless, like a bird song, or groove that you can't help but shake your ass to, that in some way connects you to history or to community or to something shared and universal. And other songs sort of help you stay in the pond and be fucked up. They sort of indulge it or
But so another way to phrase that would be to perpetuate the sort of first step in progress, which is to sort of like, is to acknowledge what's happening, like that validation piece. And so if music is helpful to sort of validate where you're at, and you see your reflection in it.
Yes.
That's like the first of many steps.
Yes.
That's just another way to put that.
And was very necessary for, we've talked at length, you and I, Spider, that it was very necessary for both of us. And, to have that when we were young, to sort of look out into the world and see people who were a little bit weirder than maybe our mom and dad, or the people in our school football team, to see people who are like, oh, these girls are thinking differently. So yeah, it none of it is to say, I don't know that there's a better or worse or a grading or a more important, less important, but it's definitely different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just curious about what rankings we could make of the contrast.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. It's like, what is there? Like if you look at geological time, music's been around a long time, and it's been, to grossly oversimplify, it's been pretty similar for all of time up until very recently. if you were an alien and you saw that there were, thousands of years of sort of music playing a certain role, and then suddenly, in a very short period of time, the message and the tone and the, like all of this change, it was like, that was sort of like what my experience was like I sort of adopted a kind of traditional music framework in my mind, and was exploring the value of it. And really, as I mentioned last week, it was Mazzy Star that was like the first sort of contrast. It was like, oh, this is a very lonely, sad, lonely young woman, and she sort of represented that whole sort of alternative cultural movement at that moment, as a representative of that, and Trio Mondelez being representative of the role that music has played for thousands of years, and that's what I don't know what to make sense of. It's like, what are the learnings? You know what I mean? Well, I don't really have a position to argue, if that makes sense.
Right. That's what I was trying to get to, is like, there's stuff to unpack underneath that. Like, I think it's a very interesting topic for sure. Like, I think, there is something different, or there might not something as if there's one thing. There are probably many things that are different that collectively gave you that feeling, gave you that contrast. I'm really interested in kind of unpacking those elements and see if we can kind of come up with a similar list, like we did the other day about timeless work. Because, I was just jotting down, like, feeling seen. Like, does this music make you feel seen? I think that is a way. Then there's, like, I guess the opposite, which is like causing you to be in a state. Which, I guess it could be any state. Those are the only two I have.
Influence, or what do you mean by causing a
like
state?
Emotional state. Like you were saying, like, let's say the Brockhampton side of music, that it might cause a perpetuation of a state of mind. Is that accurate?
I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's the question I think Rory has about does continued exposure to a thing, is that become part of the resistance to growth and betterment?
Well, part of my pushback on all of this is that constant exposure to Brockhampton is most likely not happening. This music is coming out in a very specific time and context where there isn't constant exposure to any one thing. So I'm not sure that constant exposure to Brockhampton is a thing. I think constant exposure to folk songs was definitely a thing. I think it's what everybody did at every night. They would go out to a fire in their yard and sing a song around a fire, or maybe walk around some bit of nature that's a bit more constant, probably in that culture. I don't know if Brockhampton or the like, which there is no like Brockhampton, but
there are any number of artists that sort of portray a kind of inward, introverted, depressed, anxious.
I know, it's so funny. That's another pushback I have with the whole idea. Is like there's 8 of them, and they're doing it together, and the lyrics are bouncing off of each other. It's not necessarily overly inward, and it's not performed that way. So it doesn't come to me. I don't listen to the records and the lyrics and feel inward. I feel like I'm participating in a group. So we're not having the same contextual experience, right? And the stark contrast is in that, okay, well, next to this, then there's that. And what I'm saying is there's not enough of that perpetuates this feeling in one. And
so we're perceiving it differently. And so so you don't agree with the characterization of Brockhampton as a sort of Mazzy Star or a Kurt Cobain or and that's...
Don't.
Yeah, it was sort of like right in that exact lane in my head. Like the verses sounded like someone's private thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
Like just the fact that you write something new is immediately alienating compared to performing songs that people already know. It's like, here's something you don't know.
Yeah, but
So-
most
So it's
people
like immediate,
but hold-
it's immediately just in a different
But
class.
to be constructive, it's not. We don't need to decide. So you hear Brockhampton one way, you hear another.
Yeah.
Let's make it an archetype. There is a band that is the thing Spider's describing.
Mm-hmm.
Band X. They are postmodern, inward looking, isolated, whatever these characteristics are, right?
Yeah.
So you don't think Brockhampton is that, so it doesn't
we
matter.
can leave them aside.
Yeah.
Like that's
So-
not the point.
But I think there's a distinction here because I feel like I decode some of that depression and angst from the music, but it actually still doesn't turn me inward.
Yes.
So it's
That's
sort of
what
a
I'm trying to
hybrid
say.
of- yeah.
Exactly that. That's why they're unique. And if you want to just throw another band, yes, archetype model band, feel free to use that in this example. They are not that. And I don't think people are getting that from them that are fans of them. And I do think they don't.
even-
so it's not literal. That
even
people don't take it
Nirvana.
literally.
Even Nirvana, there's people, I mean, clearly Kurt Cobain wasn't happy. He was depressed. He was going through shit, right? But I don't think it turned everyone that listens to them inward.
No.
You know what I mean? So I think it's this individual experience that people are having with the music, as well.
Because I'm also trying to get out of not talking about Brockhampton, not talking about Billie Eilish, not talking about anybody. I'm talking about the contextual experience that one person can have. Like Michael just said, I mean, I can look inward from a, some sort of sunny pop record. It's like, oh, well, I feel like this today, and I'm looking inward at my soul that's radiating, and I can also do that to a Phoebe Bridgers record and figure out where I fucked up and made all the mistakes in my life, right?
So there's no place where we can stand to characterize art in any way because everyone has a different experience of it.
I'm sure there are some, and it'd be interesting to explore, but
Yeah.
I
mean,
think
if you look at a
when you explore
hellscape,
it,
a hellscape is different than a heavenly scene in a nursery.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like we can characterize things. Like looking at a torture scene is likely to cause.
Yeah, but hold on. But this is yes, you can do that lyrically, but you can't say that someone is going to feel that exact way from that experience in that lyric.
If you like Faces of Death videos, bootleg videos when I was a kid,
Wow.
would likely cause
Real
nausea
bad.
to people.
Okay, sure.
That's what I mean. Like the characterization of certain images and messages will likely cause certain response in people statistically. Maybe
Sure. But
An
Nirvana,
individual
but
will-
Nirvana can make you feel empowered or depressed.
yeah, I found inspired by
Mm-hmm.
Nirvana records, not because of the lyrics and all that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. But if I think about the songs and the composition of them, it's mental illness on display. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's not.
Yeah, we're not disagreeing there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean,
I still come back to the I don't know what the there is and what's interesting about the there that could be there.
What's interesting to me is about the power of traditional music when it hits, and the absence of power in modern music, in my experience.
So I can speak to this because I
Yeah.
was still listening to Nirvana and playing those songs, and at the same time starting to learn traditional Irish music and becoming part of something bigger, and hearing, the very first pub sessions I went to were with, musicians who weren't as technically capable, but were brilliant entertainers. And the bar I used to go to was wild, and I couldn't really fuck up because it was just kind of wild. But you would see different people coming in and singing the same song. So when the guy who was playing the song would start singing, someone might take over for a verse. Someone who was from Donegal who would have a different way of singing it, or different phrasing, or maybe even different lyrics, or add a verse that we don't sing in Kerry, where I'm from, because he's from 300 miles away, a long, long way away in Ireland, right? So I have the experience of sort of living in both of these worlds, and there's no question in my mind that the traditional music connected me to more people and brought me more joy and had much more utility in my life. But I still love, my music sensibility is still completely informed by all of the indie records that I listen to and that world.
Yeah.
And as a 15-year-old, I that made a lot of sense to me and helped me as a I don't ever want to sort of dramatize my youth because it wasn't that dramatic. I wasn't fucked up particularly, but I was just a bit of a black sheep. I was a little bit different in my family and a little bit different than most of the people who went to my school. I wasn't a sports guy, whatever. So that music all served me. But there's no question when we think of the nutrition framing that in my life, the traditional music fed me more. Certainly in that period where there was overlap,
You're helping me clarify, all of you, actually, that I think we can all agree that some of the records, traditional records that have been played up in this loft, from Persian music and Turkish music and African music, all South American music, and now Georgian music. It has a sort of immediacy and a certain kind of energizing power. And what I wonder is, what can modern record makers do to harness that and to bring that inclusivity and sort of human immediacy to the records they make.
Well, that's what you just hit on it. That's what it is. Yeah. A lot of those other cultures of music that you're talking about, those aren't all traditional songs. Those are original pieces of music, but the human immediacy is what is connecting. The danger is what's connecting. Yeah. The surprise is what's connecting. I don't hear all those as they're not traditional songs. A lot of them that we listen to up here, they're original, start from scratch pieces of music with bands, with groups of people, not individual
minds. Based on
minds.
traditional forms in most cases.
But so is popular music. It's still based on traditional forms. They're still very similar. 1, 4, 5.
They're of the commercial product era.
Sure, but they stem from other non-commercial forms of music as well. Correct. Well, we just minimize them.
Ultimately, yeah. Ultimately they do, but they've modern music is sort of denuded of the more and more the regional elements in a sort of homogenization. It's like a post-industrial product. Whereas the closer you get to sort of music that was made collectively over generations and has survived because people enjoyed it, I think we're sort of closer to those levers or something, and that the sort of homogenized, non-regional thing, there's less potential for depth or something. I'm looking for the words, and I'm looking
so
for
with
help,
you. It just we comes back to our incentive conversation from last week and the week before. It's like, well, who's driving the incentives to make music like that? It's not modeled, it's not seen. So yeah, I agree. There's a huge lever and there's a huge space for it. I don't know who's going to do it.
Trio Mondelez is showing that there's at least some global small audience for this. And they're growing all the time. They dropped a video the other day, in 5 hours it had 12,000 views. People are paying attention.
My experience of the limited bit of travel I've done is that audiences are much less cynical in other countries than they are in the States. The general music listener is much more open to what would be considered cheesy. When you travel through France or Italy or Germany or...
It's a really good point.
Japan.
I haven't been to Japan, so but there's something, the tentative definition or framing of music that I threw out a couple of weeks ago, which was that music is the conversation between the past and the present, how did I say it? The musician and the listener, or the player and the
artist
listener.
And the listener.
Artist and the listener. Yeah. And you're putting your finger on something, Spider, which is this kind of timeless in the negative sense, countryless, sort of denuded of identity, this modern existence, this increasingly sort of stateless cloud world that we're living in, and particularly younger people they're increasingly detached from their surroundings. The example we mentioned it last week. It was Balaji or someone saying in some interview that it's very common for people not to know their neighbor in the apartment next door, and to share their deepest secrets with strangers on the other side of the world.
Sure.
So that, so you imagine if music is the second part of what I said, that a conversation between the artist and the listener, if Brockhampton is speaking to where people are at in this, I'm using them as an example, obviously, in this sort of modern way of living. And Trio Mandali is not, perhaps, as that archetype, not speaking to where people are at. So in the spirit of conversation, the Trio Mandali are not acknowledging where the kids are at. They're not acknowledging the moment in time. They're trading in something older and more with a much longer through line, but they're not actually conversationally acknowledging. So it's like I meet you on the street and you're gushing blood from your missing right arm, and I'm just like, so how's your day been going, Spider? How's PMC? How's work? It's like I'm not acknowledging this massive sort of truth, this obvious thing. So that's the value of this music that is speaking to maybe some of these more negative things, these negative emotions, this placeless thing where,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's always the question is like art and media causing culture, is culture causing art and media to be what it is. I mean, that feedback loop, I think that's probably how we all think about it. It's some kind of feedback loop. But, the evidence of time and place. So like when you hear Georgian music, there's certain types of intervals and harmonies and form that the melodies take. Certain vocabulary of flourishes and intonations, and I think wherever the music's from, if it sounds like it's from a place, to me it has a certain kind of power, and I hear other people responding to that as well, right? So I don't think I'm totally unique in that, right? The more identity it has, and even if it's a hybrid identity that you could tell the two or three converging forces, like very much Ethiopian jazz is very much like a melting pot of many things, and consequently has a kind of synthesized identity of its own, which is really unique and striking. And so is it the time and place, the context piece that like when you hear Outkast, a speaker box record, like it feels like it's from Atlanta. Does it feel like it's from Atlanta?
Yeah,
like to me, that's that's power in whatever the stew of that record is. Like that's a huge part of it, and being able to attach to it, if that makes sense.
It does.
It's the empathy thing. It's like if I can imagine, I think it's empathy. It's like if I can imagine this, again, this may be a subconscious level, right? Not consciously doing this, but placing the voice, the person, the artist in a specific time and place, that lends power to the message. Like that's part of the thing.
For you and I. So the question is, so I came up in a small country, a song from home or a melody from home takes me back, grounds me, connects me, makes me teary-eyed, missing the rolling hills of Ireland, whatever. If you are growing up
on the space station.
And effectively a lot of, I'm starting to sound very old, but effectively a lot of younger people are growing up in a kind of modern statelessness
Yes.
and their sort of sense of what it is to be American is very, we're talking about America primarily, very corrupted and very disembodied and kind of
abstract away.
and so let's imagine that there are some people, any amount of people, we can argue about how many, are growing up without this sense of place. Their place is a Discord thread somewhere or whatever. They've found their pockets in the cloud, right? Will they? So I have this connection to Ireland. So consequently, when you give me a strong flavor from Ethiopia, I'm like, I have that sense of connection to my place, so I can sort of apply that to other places, and I'm like, oh, this is different and real and true and grounded, all the stuff I would say, right? But if you grow up without that connection that I have to my country, to my music, to my heritage, and you grow up in a kind of sort of
suburban
wash of
strip
bits,
mall, like
I mean,
big box stores.
Are people growing up are they really growing up in the neighborhoods anymore, or is it more, are they growing up in their phone, you know?
Right.
So they're not playing on the street the way they used to when we were kids, and they're not meeting in the mall on the weekends. They're not, you know, the sort of
doing acid in the fountain in the town square.
Yes, all of that, right? So, but what I'm trying to explore is, will these kids growing up, I'm using the word stateless, you know, will these strong flavors matter to them?
Right.
Will they be like,
Yeah.
I don't know, next link, like new, you know,
That's what I'm feeling.
Is it? So are we witnessing a fundamental change in what connection, that means?
Yeah.
You know, why I'm on this kick is because I got back on Twitter this week and I've been just mainlining Balaji, and he's just big on this kind of the future, the distributed future, and how people will elect to live virtually where they want. You know, that their connection to the physical place they're in is going to be less and less and less.
We're seeing it happen already.
It happened in the last year. Yeah. Amazon bring groceries to my door. Yeah. Like the doorbell rings, and I don't even see the
from the music front. I'm not sure that. I don't know if we'll ever get it back. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. Like I mixed the song today. It was 2 minutes and 4 seconds. Just felt like an idea. You know, it could have went on. And that's what's happening. You know, it's in the raw material. These are non-finished concepts because either they don't have the time or they don't have the care for the time. It's one of the two. And I don't have any optimism for it. So I'm just like, whatever the kids like, you know. I'm serious. Like that's why going back to Brockhampton and going back to and Billie Eilish, right? Let's just use these, like they're kind of the, you know, they're the introverted lyric. They're the lonesome selves that are, you know, one's with their brother and one's with their brothers, and they're doing things that make people feel good. Do they make them feel good as long as that they're going to make they made you feel good when you think back to songs of your childhood or even me? I mean, I'm in the middle of it all, of what you're talking about. I don't know. I'm just kind of lost on the whole thing, and we keep talking about it, and we still haven't hit it. We still haven't hit like what it is, and I don't know if there is a thing. And that's what I'm just kind of coming back to what's there. We keep talking about it. I would love to figure it out more, but I'm kind of bored by the idea. That's why I'm bringing it up. I'm just kind of bored because
it just seems like that's everything about record making. I mean, this is
but it used to be. It used to be, and what we're talking about now in a quote unquote stateless world that our young people are growing up in, and I am falling into. We are falling into, and we can resist falling into it, but there's a lot of positives to it. There's a lot of positives to the blockchain. There's a lot of positives to being decentralized, right? There's a lot of positives to a universal passport where you can come and go as you please with finances, right? There's a lot of positives there, but this is potentially a byproduct of that as well. And that lack of grounding overall, that this just might be the way it is. And then music takes another life on itself, and it's to have transitory moments in and out of these different states that can happen every 2 minutes. It just seems like a different world.
But I mean, this thing, whatever it is like, seems to me like the criteria for what you think is good and what isn't. Like,
but what I think is good and what isn't
doesn't
doesn't matter, right? Because I don't hold the personal connection to it. I try to bring out as much of that realism as possible, but not as much as you'd want it to be, because it's not there. It's not in the raw material.
Sure.
So I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you on that
I mean,
at
the
all.
reason
I
you would nudge a hi-hat is so it does the thing we're talking
about. No, I did it today. Actually, no, I didn't do that today because Mike Miller pointed out today I mixed 2 songs today without hi-hats, which is that's never happened in one day.
That's great. Bring them on.
Yeah,
2 minutes 4 seconds. I'm down with that too.
Yeah, one
no
was 2:30, one was 2:04.
I like the song already. I'm going to hum it on the way home.
One was good. One was really good. One was not so good. I know what you're saying, but I'm doing it for selfish reasons. I'm doing it so I can get through the record. I'm not going to play that record. I'm going to play the Ethiopian jazz record. I'm going to play the Georgian record.
But as audio engineers, so if we zoom out and we say the purpose of audio engineers is to maximize human connection
with what's given to you, though.
But if you're capturing it, that's your job.
Sure.
As an audio as a tracking engineer.
But if the artist or the producer is not giving you that, then there's nothing,
of course,
to enhance.
Yeah,
but it's the guiding. But you will always do whatever you can with what you have.
Yeah,
sure. But the example, just going back to the Trio Mondoli thing, is they're doing it with a handheld.
Yes.
And they're giving it.
Yes.
There's no one that can even get in the way of that.
Yeah.
So then we got Brockhampton, right?
Yeah.
Just going back to our original, just to tie this knot with a little sweet bow, is they are produced, but they're also trying to give it to us like they are. Like that's their version of it. They actually, I bet if you ask them, they think that they're doing what Trio Mondoli is doing. They think they're coming together, collaborating, and giving us their best them as truthfully and organically as a collective. And we can't tell them they aren't. There's no objective reality where they're not giving us.
Well, there is
giving us that.
I mean, it's a Pro Tools session and it's a mix and it's all kinds of preparation.
But the minute you put Trio Mondoli's iPhone recorder into a Pro Tools session, it becomes the same thing effectively.
No, it gets uploaded to YouTube and we watch it.
Well,
I mean,
but it can also exist in that format. They can become the same thing. We watch them live outside of their Pro Tools session, and you still got that same feeling. I'm just saying that I don't see much light between the two for a different type of person in a different context.
I see what you mean. So there's a flattening of culture, that makes the differences irrelevant, to young people.
Potentially, yes. That's what how I see it. Yes.
I know what you're saying, John. Overall, I think that a month ago, as was very evident on Mike, I was maybe 6 weeks ago. I was very despondent about where things were going and really sort of renegotiating my relationship with the work, because if I can't connect to these things we talk about, I don't know what to do next, or I don't care to do it. It's like, well, someone posted on Gearsuts this week on the mastering forum, do you, the question on the heading was, should I boost the top end or cut it?
Oh my God.
Right? And it's like, I feel bad for the dude because it's so...
Wait.
So...
Verbatim?
I could find it, but it's basically that.
Oh gosh.
But actually, when you lose touch with what the music is about, any one of us could ask the same question. It's like, if I don't know why I'm doing it and I can't feel what the record is trying to communicate, then I don't know, should I boost the top end or should I cut it? Like, I don't have a compass anymore.
Well, That
Man,
You know what I mean?
I have so many thoughts.
So, but anyway, my point is that this exploration, I think, this exploration of that we've been doing over the last 4, 5, 6 episodes, whatever, has been really useful to me in terms of renegotiating with music and rediscovering stuff. And also, you know, I was struck, you know, I sort of, how would I say it? Like, I carry hopes for all of you. You know, I think about you guys a lot in terms of your work and what I want to see sort of happen for you. You know, not that I have a specific thing. Oh, I hope John gets this client, or I hope Michael writes his book and goes on tour. Like, not that specific, but more sort of the feeling of what it will be like for you guys to be more realized than you are right now, you know?
I keep coming back to empathy. You know, when I, and maybe not everyone's doing this, but when I listen to singers, like, I give myself over to, like if I were watching a movie, you sort of give yourself over to the character and you're in their shoes, sort of experiencing what they're experiencing. And with some recordings, it's like there's not much there to experience. Like, it's not, I'm giving myself over to it, but nothing's happening.
yes.
And then there's like stuff that's happening that, like, I give myself over to the Trio Mandili thing very easily. I give myself over to Ethiopian jazz very easily. Even instrumental music, I can give myself over to it emotionally, and let my body experience what it's expressing. Like, let myself become it. And there's certain music that I can feel things, but I don't want to feel them. Do you know what I mean? And I'm wondering if that empathy piece, if people are just listening to music or if they're like embodying it, like experiencing it, you know, what the depth of that is.
I think that what you're responding to in the Ethiopian music is their vulnerability, their openness. You know, if they're singing in a clearly out of tune but carefree, passionate way, that openness leads you to, their swords are down, and you're like, fuck it, I'm putting mine down too, and I'm gonna go with this. What I was thinking about when I was thinking about, you know, carrying hopes for you guys and for me too, and for really everyone, for Graham and this. We, you know, at various points over the last year, you know, you and I, Spider, you trying to figure out changes, you know, in your work. Michael, sort of this pivot that you're doing to the writing work right now and renegotiating. Me, just all on Mike over the last 6 weeks, like, kind of like, I mean, do I even want to do this anymore? Like, what am I doing? Graham sort of at the start of his arc, you know what I mean? And looking to catch the first wave and really go, right? And what I've been thinking a lot about this last week is the piece around fundamental human needs, like what people really, really need deep down, not what they're saying, not what other people are doing or offering them, not what's popular, what they really, really need. And there was a bunch of little moments during the week. So like one was Sam Kaufman, Skloff, amazing drummer, great dude, just got a bunch of praise for his playing on the new St. Vincent record. And,
oh, great.
Really, so we were there yesterday, Kyle and I, and so we hadn't been, we did some planning on this room, and then some stuff was getting built that took a long time, like took 6 months, and, you know, should have taken 6 weeks maybe. And the project lost its heat. But when I went back, Sam had implemented a whole bunch of changes that we had suggested. And I don't even remember which one of the three of us. It was like, oh, maybe that was Spider's idea and this part was my idea. And the vision, this vision piece for what his room could be. So Sam is a drummer who records himself. And so he's he's trying to be expressive. He's trying to feel the songs the way we talk about, but he's also trying to choose the right drums, tune them, and capture it. He's trying to carve out an identity as an artist, all the stuff we've talked about.
Yeah.
So we went and did a workshop with him there and figured this stuff out. But when I came back, it was like the room had been completely rejigged. And I was like, oh, you're trying the thing we riffed on that day? He was like, changed everything. Everything is different. I'm working twice as quick. My foot, and he just, and it was just one of those things. It was like, I don't even remember where Spider ended, where I started, where Kyle took over. Kyle did these. So Sam records in a drum room, and one of the challenges he was having is some clients wanted dead, some wanted live. So how do we treat this room? So Kyle was like, well, we make these fucking giant absorbers with doors on them that are automated from a remote control, and you decide. And it was just like, and we were like, wait, you can do that? Like, so if you've ever been to Capital A, they have them, but they're by hand and they're always out of sync, and you always, when you go there, you rearrange them because, that's what you do.
It's fun.
Yeah. But Kyle designed these things, and we got them built, and they were delivered yesterday, and they're beautiful. And, they're working, we texted with Sam today, and they're working incredibly well. He can make the room
so cool.
dead. He can go 70s funk, and he can open it up or close it up and go reflective, right? So it's really powerful. But what I was,
Snaps.
right?
It's crazy.
But what I was struck by is not so much the technical stuff. I was struck by how he felt supported. And it was like, oh, fuck, this is the meaning piece. This is why we do it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, you guys are awesome. It was like, my life is better.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My work life, which is so much of our lives, the way we work, it's just better. And, had that with Shirley. It was a bunch of stuff over the last week where it was like, because we're, with our project at the moment, there's some that are like intractable and then a bunch that are going really, really well. And it's easy to forget about the ones that go really well, because you're like focused on the puzzle of the one where you're like, how do we get this built within the budget or whatever, So anyway, all that to say that the theme of the week for me in my mind was just this: how do we go below the levels of what other people are offering? How do we go below the levels of what people think they want? And how do we see people for where they're really at and give them what they need, what they really need? The David White piece, the vocation piece, rather than the ambition piece. My ambition is to be a really well-known mastering engineer with a high rate. But what if I really serve a deeper purpose in people's lives? You know what I mean? So that's what I've been thinking about. And sort of feeling grateful this week for a lot of evidence of sort of having really met people's needs. Even if they're just kind of technical, that it does support their goals, that they feel empowered or
Well, you're doing it with a
emboldened.
purpose. It's technical with a purpose.
Yeah.
With a desired outcome. That's
And it's built on
for the
human,
better, yeah.
human relationships
Yeah.
and real questions and sometimes difficult
Problem
questions.
solving.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know where all that goes.
Yeah, I
but-
mean, ultimately, that's, again, like, I think if you get down to any vocation, that becomes the bottom line. I think that's how the economy works best, is if you have, if you're cooking food and you're in a restaurant, like, you have a purpose. Like, there's meaning to, like, when I think about how I eat, it involves people who are running businesses in the neighborhood, and you form connections with people. And if it isn't your orientation, I think you miss out on the best parts. And even, like, obviously there are corrupt channels people can go down to benefit in the short term, but I think, like, that goodwill and good faith acting is going to create more opportunity. It's a general strategy for a more open field of opportunity. So an audio engineer, we're saying, oh yeah, your job is human connection. You're going to facilitate that and make sure, maintain the bandwidth and the resolution, like, however you want to think about it, the depth and power of it. I mean, you're doing a public service doing that. I mean, this is, if music is a thing that sort of lives between people, a common ground that we can bond over. I mean, it's a grave responsibility. And I think if you don't think of it that way, that's when you end up staring at a screen thinking about frequencies. Like you're missing the point and you're missing the magic as it goes by.
Amen to that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was having a hard time with, I'll talk on that for a minute, because I was having a hard time with this project, this new artist that I'm mixing. The first song was really great. I was talking about it on Live with Matt Rad on Tuesday. So I said yes to this, and then the other songs are just they're not there, and they're so not there that I don't know what to do with them. I had the obvious connection to the first one. I knew exactly what to do. It happened quick. It was approved quick. Everyone was happy. And the other ones they're still really happy with, and I don't know what it is. I talked about it on Tuesday. Halfway through the mix, I just bounced it. I was like, I was texting a friend too, and I was like, I've never done this before, and someone who I mix for too. And I was like, I don't do this to you. I've never done this before, but I just bounced it. I don't think it's done. And then they loved it. They just asked me to swap out a stem. It's like, I guess there's some sort of intuition that I have around like a lot of different types of music at this point. And it's, that comes down to practice and understanding of references, I guess. But I don't know what it is. And then today's too, I haven't finished it yet because one of the two, one I finished, it was clear. The other one's like, I don't know. And that's a hard thing as an engineer or any sort of creative to do, is you don't know what the thing is. It's not as fun. You're not as confident. You're not your best. Like maybe someone would get that record better than I would. And I said that to Mike Miller, and he was like, nobody would get this record. I was like, that's hilarious. Sorry, that's
Mike's your cheerleader.
Yeah, I know. No, but you know what I mean. Maybe there would be, but maybe there wouldn't be. Maybe it's just not all there. And it's not in the source material because people didn't work hard enough, or they didn't have their best that day, or whatever it could be. But I know for me, if I don't know what it's supposed to be, I probably shouldn't work on it.
It's hard to bring it across the line.
There's no guide.
Yeah. But you also can't back out of it because you've agreed to a project, and then they've stopped looking for someone else for it. They've hired me. They've contracted me. That's a conundrum, just as on a professional level, where I still have to show up and do my best work because I agreed to something, but I don't know what it is. And that's the connection piece we're talking about. It didn't have enough of the elements that are that have clear, historic comparisons or
some compelling.
Yeah. Well, the vocal is compelling, right? The singer's great, right? I took the gig because the singer's fantastic. So the performance of a bad song is still a bad song. The performance can be as compelling as possible, and you hear the melody is not connecting still with the way the chords are supporting it. It's not supporting it. There's pieces that, functionally, yes, it exists as a song and it's harmonically supported, but it's not emotionally supported to give you that compelling
guiding voice.
I think nobody would put themselves on the hook for this more than me, this kind of problem. But if you're showing up with reasonably open, and your rig is working, and you've put the time aside, and you've tried again, and you're relying a little bit on muscle memory for balances and to put it in the pocket, then you've done what you were paid for. You're showing up, and at some point we can't sort of infantilize the client. They chose you. They like what you do, and they
wrote a long email saying that there's many, many more to come. We're having such a great experience with you.
Yeah, great.
I was like, wow.
So
I'm
glad. I would be beating myself up more than you are, but I would. I know it would be wrong. I can see from this side of the table tonight that it's like you're doing everything you can, and
the song was written a while ago.
And even just the act of saying this tonight is like, I've said this to you before, but like, because we had some conversations off mic about problematic projects that you shared very openly with Graham, and I was just bigging you up for how useful that is. Because I was thinking during the week about how many, if I ask a young engineer, where are you at with your work? And they're like, well, my computer's old, and if I could just get a computer, if I could just get this, or if I could just get in the room with this guy. And then it's like, well, like I was just talking to that guy or his producer or whatever, you know, and they're just struggling with some other problem. Like there is no place you get to where it's over. So it's like start enjoying your day now. Like start enjoying making records today, because there isn't some, you don't get over the hump and then it becomes great when you have enough mic pre's or something.
I enjoyed so much of my time working on terrible records, you know, when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, all the way to 35.
Yeah, the learning is
I still had a
fun in
great
and of
time.
itself.
Very addictive, yeah.
You know, and even during, you know, I'm complaining on this episode a little bit about this record, but I still tried to find the magic. Like, again, I talked about it Tuesday with Matt. I started over 3 times on this song. Like I really tried, and I don't want to say I had fun doing it, but I attempted to do my best 3 times, and then, you know, so it's part of the gig.
Yeah, I think
It just is.
I think it's
Can't always connect with everything.
Well, we've talked about it so often with wine. It's like if every bottle was great every time, then what would be the bottles that came from our friend today as a thank you. Like I have no idea what they're going to be like. I mean, I know they're going to be great, but I have no idea.
2015.
Yeah, so if someone we did a favor for sent us a really kind gift, and
Come on, that vintage. Come on.
yeah, I'm super excited. But the point is, I just don't know.
Yeah.
I've been super excited about bottles before, and it's like, didn't really go. And then the sleeper just gets you on the right night. It's like that $20 bottle of white is like, whoa, what's going on with this? Why is this popping tonight?
Yeah.
And you know, and so it's, you know.
I'm thinking a lot about that in general. There was an episode of Tim Ferriss, I think it was with Esther Perel, I was listening to recently, and there was a question that he said he asked someone, some Nobel Prize winner that he interviewed, I forgot who that was, but what is the best purchase you've made that was under $100?
Oh yeah,
And
that's a knowledge project question. Doesn't he always ask that, Shane? Is that?
No, that's Tim Ferriss.
That's a Tim Ferriss.
question? Oh,
It's a
okay.
Tim question.
Yeah.
But the answer was a bottle of wine because it's impermanent. And he remembers the experience of that bottle of wine and it being gone as the best thing that he's ever purchased under $100. And I was thinking that all of the wine and all the experiences that we have through wine are about the experience. I remember so many more things in correlation to a bottle of wine than I can any other sort of way. And that's ironic because memory is not served well after alcohol, especially with me with bad short-term memory in general. But I can remember so many, like finishing Alterna Vu's album and going to Shibumi and having a 2002 Ravino, Montetanier. Like that was 3 years ago, and I just know that moment, right? It's just so many. That was over $100 bottle, but still, like that's not necessarily the point. But you can correlate that with anything. But that I've been meditating a lot on that this week. I've always been thinking about impermanence because everything is, especially when you have near-death experiences, you kind of realize that really quickly. Or if you lose people super close to you as well, you realize that, I'm sure, in many facets. But that really struck me hearing that, because this person could have anything that they want, and they want something that goes away. And I'm wondering why I have such a connection to wine when I don't drink a lot of alcohol. Like I can't really handle more than a glass or two every few like days or whatever it is. And I have such a rich connection to the idea of it. Anyway, so, you know.
The cultural piece around wine, you know, it's the language of drinking wine is to savor.
Yeah.
Is to stop, to look the person you're clinking glasses with in the eye, you know, put your nose up to it, maybe hold it up to the light.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when we were at Alex's place, you know, I walked around the room twice before I drank
the Krug?
the Ent.
The Ent, yeah.
Because I didn't want to, there was so many good wines stacked up that night, I didn't want to gulp them down. I wanted to take the nose and then just pace for a second, just be like, just make sure you savor this, because it's really special wine. But generally that's built in. You know, usually on a given night, you've got one bottle open or two. And it's like, well, this is what we're doing. This is a focal point. This is where we're all going to, and it's also communal. It's like, hey, we're sharing
talking
the
about
same
it.
thing.
And it's such a great way to signal intention. you know, it's like, I'm pulling this bottle for this night,
Yes.
and you put it on the table, and everyone has a sense, like
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
everyone's on the same page with wine, it's a sort of signaling language, high points and low points. I mean, and you can look back over the year, like John's saying, and say, oh yeah, remember we opened that bottle. They're like on the timeline, you can just put the bottles and then all the stories associated with them.
Yeah, that's it. The bottles John opens here often are like, oh, I know you like this spider, or you know, when you got me that bottle at Christmas, it's like, hey, you're super into the Northern Rhone thing. Here's this maker, you know, comes very, you know, whatever. So it is. I like that, the signaling piece, the storytelling piece,
And even
you
the
know?
cost is an important part of that. You know, it again, it's like just another kind of marker of significance
Yes.
to different occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that necessarily turned up, but the impermanence factor, like where things come and go, and that's why, like, even just trying to bring it back to the earlier conversation of the types of music that we're kind of debating over. I don't even know if that's really the right word.
Exploring.
We're living in a way more impermanent world, and people are adapting to that, and I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I think our work suffers because of it, and the creations that are in our industry are without a doubt suffering. There's way more not so good than there is good being made, and not just sonically, like emotionally. But there's also way more wine that's being made that is not so good as, you know, compared to what's made that's good. That's limited bottlings and sold out in a month or less, and you can't find it unless you know an importer. And, you know, you can only, I don't know, I'm trying to have an analogy here. You can only have access to so many songwriters and producers that, you know, that can emotionally connect and engineers and the whole team. I don't know. It sounds hard. It just sounds hard to do what we're exploring that is a missing experience in music right now, and maybe earlier in the times that we're talking about, even still postmodern or still post traditional music, post classical. The incentives were clear that you were going into the studio with the best guitar player from this group and the best this, and so-and-so's writing the chorus, and everyone's going to come together on this day and knock out a 10-song album. And there's a lot more incentive to connect in a group form and make something that's going to connect to larger groups because of this. That's, you know, there's this writing camp world now and bedroom world. It's
we're adapting. And I'm really glad you're pointing out this fact, because there are so many ways that we are adapting. I think my interest with traditional music, I think, is connected to the ways in which we're not adapting as well to the new environment. You know, the rates of depression and anxiety for young people, especially entering college, university age. And when I have a sense of like deep human connection, I'm like, well, that's a part of that. That's a part of that human need. And what is it that if you look at trends, if you see depression and anxiety rates going up, suicide rates, this sort of thing going up in a certain age group, it's like, well, what changed?
right.
And that's part of where my head's at too. I think it's connected to, and has to be in some way related to, the music the young people listen to. I mean,
If
it's
they're
always a
listening to it,
reflection.
I'm going to always come back to that part. I don't even know if they're listening to it. I don't know if they're listening deep enough to even get that feeling from it, because it doesn't.
Well, maybe they're not. Let's just look at it in terms of upvoting. They don't even need to be listening to it. It's like, but the plays are through the roof on Spotify. Somebody's playing it, right? So I'm just saying, again, I'm not saying the music is poisoning people. I'm saying you can look at the charts as a sort of reflection of culture.
Sure.
You know, so yeah, I think that's part of it too. It's like, well, if we want music to connect on a deeper level, like we believe there are certain elements, and looking for the words for those. If we want music to play the role in society that it has in the past, that we, you know, where's the expertise on this? Like, what do we know about the role of music in well-being and Georgian culture? Like, what are the facts? Like, what do we actually? It just seems like the intuitions are so strong. It's like, of course, you're in Scotland and you're finishing Tweed and you're singing songs together. Like, it must be making the time go by in a more pleasant way. It's got to be uplifting. There must be some measure. Like, if you prohibited people from doing that, would it have a negative impact on their well-being? I mean, I think we all know that like music it does something for us. It's positive, and connects us and gives us feelings and allows us to sort of, in very much the way storytelling does in all its forms, allow us to sort of live through situations and learn from them without being traumatized and whatever.
I think the reason why I come in from the middle is I feel myself shifting towards the lack of connection to music as a fan of music. Like, I don't feel when I press play. I was sent a song by Raul yesterday, and he's like, "Yo, mix on this is tight." And I was like, "It's all right. Like, it's good." I don't feel it like I'm supposed to feel it. Mm-hmm. The song was great. Artist is great. Producer, everything about it's great. The mix lost the connection. Like, but maybe someone else or 1 million to 10 million other people are really connecting emotionally to their level of the level of connection that they're used to from music versus where we're used to from music. Mm-hmm. And then that's okay. Mm-hmm. Then I don't have to connect with it on that level.
Sure.
But I'm definitely falling off connection to music emotionally as a fan, not as an engineer, because I still can find the thing. Like you're talking about, you nudge the thing and you try to get there. But as a listener of what's coming out, definitely not. You have to put on the Ethiopian records, have to put on the Persian records, have to put on the Indonesian records, have to put on 60s jazz records, like to for me to get that connection. So. And Georgian records, like I get it.
Yeah.
But I'm in that demographic. I'm losing it.
Yeah.
I'm not pressing play.
I mean, what you're saying more specifically is you're not losing your connection to music. You're not finding as much stuff to connect to in the modern streaming.
And I'm not old.
Yeah.
And I talk to 20-year-olds on the regular while working with them. I'm like, I'm still in it. I'm still in the language. I understand what's being made. It's like I'm not at that 50 place yet, where I might fall out.
We're way closer to it.
I know you are. Sorry, guys.
Michael,
I'm way out.
What was the link you sent? Was that for later, or is it something you've looked at?
Yeah. No, it's related to what we were talking about earlier. Just I've been reading some studies as you guys were talking around sort of the psychological effects of music. This one that I sent was, I'm trying to find the thread. There we go. This is an interesting one. It was the role of music in ethnic identity formation when ethnicities have been sort of spread out and had to leave their home country.
Yes.
And so they were linking a few things to it, but saying that there was definitely an affect from music helping to unify, helping to shape identity on a way bigger level than like a high school kid, you know what I mean? Something way more dramatic. So that was interesting. And then there's tons of studies about the positive affect of music on people. So like I didn't see anything about like the specific kind of music, but I did see that there is a correlation between like music and positive mindset.
Yeah, there's some blood pressure, different stress, and I've seen.
Yeah,
people.
There's like at least 8 studies that I saw just in quick passing, but it wasn't genre specific. They didn't compare Brockhampton to anyone, unfortunately.
Well, the science is in. I'm going to try this music thing and see how I feel.
So that's cool. I mean, it's nothing really new, but I did think it was a cool take in terms of the ethnic identity formation.
Yeah, it must be. I mean,
actually, there were 2 links, by the way. There's like a small Psychology Today one. It compressed it.
Nice.
And that has at the bottom of that article.
Oh yes,
it
okay, I
links
see.
To like 6 or 7 different studies. I just skip to the bottom and go to references and look at those. Like there's a bunch of good studies on this.
I mean, we walk around, claiming the music's good for us, might be good to have a little substantiation behind that.
Yeah, rather than just our own.
I think we could still
beliefs.
walk around and say it.
Yeah, well.
So
It's been confirmed.
I was sick at the weekend, sitting in bed, and I was scanning a website. This is not a pivot. This is an opportunity for someone else to pivot. But I wanted to read this, and I'll butcher it probably, but because I haven't actually practiced reading it at all. It was a short poem I found, and I thought there's one line in it that just kills me. So I'm going to read this, and then maybe the conversation goes somewhere else, or maybe it doesn't. It kind of relates, but it kind of doesn't. I just like it a lot. So it's called A Portable Paradise, written by Roger Robinson. And it is, and if I speak of paradise, then I'm speaking of my grandmother, who told me to carry it always on my person, concealed, so no one else would know but me. That way, they can't steal it, she'd say. And if life puts you under pressure, trace its ridges in your pocket, smell its piney scent on your handkerchief, hum its anthem under your breath. And if your stresses are sustained and daily, get yourself to an empty room, be it hotel, hostel, or hovel. Find a lamp and empty your paradise onto a desk. Your white sands, green hills, and fresh fish. Shine the lamp on it like the fresh hope of morning and keep staring at it till you sleep.
I mean, I could pick that one up.
Do it.
I feel like you guys should have read that on the episode titled "We Tell Mike Not to Leave LA." I think I've definitely felt that. I've had a lot of time to myself. I've already read 2.5 books.
Wow.
I'm really deep in it. Been thinking about status a lot. I just pushed a complete website update last night. And with that, a complete reframing of sort of what is being offered and done. And that came from the time in this place I'm in right now, and I'm not alone. Ross is like literally 5 minutes away, but like we don't see each other every day. So, he's busy working, he's doing his thing. So I'm pretty much alone, which is great. And I've had the time to explore neighborhoods on my own and just be on my own as much as possible. So I feel like that idea of kind of pouring yourself out and the idea of, I think you said continued stressors or something, that hits home because I've had that. I've had those continued stressors of like status isn't what I want it to be. And I'm not really going to be able to sleep until it is. So, yeah, that resonates deep, and it's definitely a motivation to why I'm here and what I'm doing. And it's been very useful to have the solitude.
Yeah. What is
that's beautiful? It's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, this line just killed me. The trace its ridges in your pocket. That's so beautiful. Just that, so beautiful.
It's so intimate.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. The another an Irish poet read it. I should have actually just played him reading it because he reads it really well. But that line killed me. What is on this arc of ambition to what do we call it? The David White, from ambition to vocation. What is status becoming? Are we moving along that arc? What's changing?
I think it's owning the fact that it is a consultancy and embodying everything that could possibly mean, understanding really what that means in the design space, or really business consulting space, and putting all of my skill sets into it. And, I had, just an aside, I had this like moment the other day where I'm like, sounds weird, and I don't mean to like come off as like cocky about it. I was like, and you've said this to me before, you're good at a lot of different things, right? And it sounds great. Everyone's like, that's great. I would love to be good at things, right? Except when you can't weave them together. And then it just becomes a lot of competing things
Yes.
that you're good at. So it's been the latter for a very long time. And I've gotten bored with doing one thing for a while, or I'd get into a job and I would just find a way to innovate and create a little pocket for myself, because I'm like, I can't just do design. Like I know so much more than that. I care so much more about other things, and it allows me to connect dots and do all this stuff. But I don't feel like I'm a Renaissance person. Like I don't think I have mastery in all of these disciplines, but I think I'm very good at a lot of disciplines. They're related disciplines, but in the corporate space, they're very specific functions on a very specific trajectory and a hierarchy, right? They're not integrated. So I'm like, well, I just like typed in Google the other day, mid, just pouring myself out. What do you do when you're good at a lot of things? I was like, maybe Google will know.
I'd love to have seen the auto-completes for that. What do you do when?
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, God, yeah. Or when you're good at. I'll do that right now for you.
What
do
no, I don't
you
wanna...
do when you're good at anything? Great. Okay. Well, anyway, I came upon this term, which is funny because we've talked about potential before. It's multi-potentiality, and it's a word that came out. It was introduced in like I think 70s, maybe early 70s. There was like one reference to it, and then years later, maybe or decade later, there was another reference, and then recently someone did a TEDx talk. Then she kind of blew up from it, talking about this concept, but drawing the distinction between mastery in something and just well versed in it, and it was this really great moment for me because I was feeling so I felt like the gifts, you could say, that people might perceive didn't feel like gifts. And that's never a feeling you want to have, but it was like, shit, I wish I was just like really bad at everything except like one thing, or I just didn't care about anything else. But and that was the mode. It was like, maybe that's a way of solving it. Just like going so hard on niching into one little crevice of the universe, which I did for a very long time, like social media content for music, on Instagram, period. And I'm like, that's not fulfilling, right? So anyway, I'm exploring this writing, and they had like tons of different ways of integrating this idea into your life, like whether it's having a full-time job and doing some things part-time, which I had done for a while, like playing music on the side, but having a full-time job, or having like multiple part-time jobs, or having a consultancy where you're able to weave them. And so I just felt very seen over the last few days. And I had this moment, I'm sitting at my computer watching this person speak to another person about this idea, and she has like a whole group and a whole thing, obviously things to buy into and whatever, which is cool. People do it. But I'm like, wow, that's great that exists. And it was a kind of a moment of feeling seen, of like, wow, other people are struggling with this. It's not like just me, and it's not like even uncommon, though it hasn't been spoken about, at length in literature. So that was cool. And that didn't solve it per se, but I just stopped and was like, what if status embodied everything that I could do? Like, and I pulled a spider and was like, I'm just going to update the website as a way of getting it into a form. And I was like, I'm okay destroying the entire status website, because with Squarespace, what I love is that this sounds like a great ad, but it's not. What I love about Squarespace is what I love about it is that you save it and then it's live. Like there is no in between. There's no like current version and then you push an update. Like it's just you hit save and it's live. So like I was like, I'm committing right now to just putting it all in there. Every single page updated, except the case studies, which I'm going to do in a few days. But it felt great to weave it all together to kind of come to a more concise version of what status is. That's a big part of trying to introduce myself to other business owners. If I don't know what it is, it's kind of hard to quote unquote sell something, you know? That poem sort of captures a lot of where I was at and kind of where I feel like I'm getting to, which is something I was very excited about for this trip. And, you know, because to me, it's not a vacation. It's always like, if I'm traveling, it's meant to be like deep introspection, deep problem solving, like carving the space to fully do it. Ironically, I'm like learning skateboarding, like it's a brand new thing that I'm like, oh, let me just get good at another thing that I won't know how to integrate. So status like now feels a little bit better, and I want you guys to check the site out when you can. I'd love to hear what you think. But I think it actually reflects a lot of your notes early on, Rory. It was like, I feel like this doesn't represent what you're doing or what you did for PMC. And like it didn't. And now I feel like it really does. So that has been a big change over the last 48 hours. So that's
exciting.
cool. My dad thinks I
Very
need to use more
exciting.
color, but he's like, I know you like purple, but I'm like, all right.
I like your aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks, Dad. What else? So yeah, that's been feeling great. I'm reading this other book right now. I'm going to show you the cover. Get ready for this one.
Get out of here. No, you didn't.
This is like
That is incredible. Will you tell our listeners what we're looking at?
I want all of our listeners to go on Amazon and look up the fully revised 5th edition of the classic bestseller, $1 Million Consulting, The Professional's Guide to Growing a Practice by Alan Weiss. I want you to look up that cover. It's navy blue. There's a little bit of beige at the top.
Let me see it one more time.
You won't be able to unsee this, man.
It'll look, you know,
The gradient in the letters.
speaking of poetry, you know, we would need a poet to do this justice just to how ugly it is. But the thing that comes to mind immediately is Steven Seagal. Like that's like
It's the
looks
sunset
like,
gradient in the block letters. It's like
It looks like the gradient on aviators when
yes,
they're
yeah.
drawn
it's
out.
pretty sleazy gradient.
It's a horrendous cover, but it actually serves an
apologies
incredible
to whomever.
function. So horrendous in terms of just like, oh wow, what?
Yeah.
But contextually not horrendous at all. Contextually, if this was in an airport over here, you guys could probably still read it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's on camera.
Certainly
But so it
can.
serves the function that it is, which is there's business people, the consultants flying when we used to be able to fly. You're going into a airport, you're seeing a ton of books and magazines and candy and everything is bright and everything's in your face.
competitive,
And, you know, is it able to say the thing that's going to capture you
Right.
and really grab you quick? And $1 million, the biggest bunch of words on the cover, and then consulting is the second. So I don't know. From a design analysis point of view, it does exactly what it needs to do. Now, I think what's unfortunate about it, and what I think it doesn't do, is capture the quality of the content. It's the 5th edition, and in the beginning, he says that every edition he has gone through every chapter and like edited. He doesn't just like add like an appendix or like now for internet, you know, like or whatever.
Right.
Like he goes through and fully cleans things up and takes things out, and you could feel it. It feels like a well-honed piece of literature. It's thick, tons of diagrams, like really well-founded thinking. And so that was a big motivation to also sort what I'm doing out. And then I read another book on sales called Demand Side Sales by this guy that a guy that partnered with another guy, Clayton Christensen and Bob Modesta. Bob Modesta wrote this book, Demand Side Sales, and he and Clayton Christensen created this idea called Jobs to be Done, which is like a product building philosophy of basically uncovering these needs, these fundamental needs for an audience that are that do not change, that are consistent over time, even decades.
Yes.
I've used that at many jobs and to great success. So he was on a podcast, and I didn't even know he was actually the person that created it or co-created it. But he was like, I have a book on sales. And I'm like, if there's any book on sales I'm going to read, it's by that guy. So I read that. That was really illuminating for me in terms of just the way you approach the whole thing. I only had this model of like an aggressive salesperson, or like what sales meant to me. And it was nice to hear and learn from someone else. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of good forward motion. And I guess to pivot from that, the IG Lives are going really well. I had one with Angel today, and it was so great. She's really wonderful and such a great speaker. And we talked about this point of deep observation. And I was saying deep listening. We were both saying deep listening. And then I was like, it's more just about general observation. Like if we were trying to abstract it to like all creatives, right? So yeah, you guys were talking earlier, and this idea of deep observation came to my head, because it's not just about observing music. Like you could deeply observe wine or whatever, you know? So lots of things there. But yeah, progress, man. Progress.
It sounds like a lot of stuff is popping. And so you're down in San Diego, and I get in the elevator beside you. I'm like, hey, what's up, dude? What do you do? 30 seconds.
I'm like, bro, you have a mask on?
What do you? Yeah. I have a mask on. You're using up your elevator time here. I'm gonna go back down to the first floor and then get back in and be like, now tell me what you do. Now I've got to restart this ride.
So I run a design consultancy called Status, and we help brands navigate the future of technology and whatever's coming.
And communication.
Yeah.
One more time.
Yeah.
So you run a design consultancy called Status?
Consultancy called Status, and we help brands navigate the future. And in terms of the forms that take, if you were to ask in the elevator, that can be, and I list this here on the site, kind of 4 quadrants: bolder decision-making, stronger teams, remarkable brand identity, and focused communications. Sort of those 4
improvement points.
Improvements, yeah.
Dimensions.
Run those one more time for me.
Bolder decision-making, stronger teams, remarkable brand identities, and focused communications. Getting live feedback right now.
Yeah, yeah.
No,
it's a lot. It's a lot.
You're just watching me think. I'm just nodding my head and sort of and processing that.
And if people want to follow along, you can go to stt.us/services. You can see what we're talking about.
Oh, baby. This feels like Rory and I just clicked into workshop mode. I think.
You
know what I mean? I'm like,
this is dangerous.
I'm like, are we?
There's a fan's coming on. One more time, Michael. I like hearing you say them. Sorry, just to
the 4 quadrants.
Yeah, the 4 quadrants. Yeah.
Bolder decision making. So helping teams, strategize better, right? Whether that's market research, so they're able to make better decisions, a vision, right? Brand vision, and even project management to be able to see further, right? And then you're able to make bolder decisions if you're able to see outside of the narrow window, right?
Yes.
And if you have a strong vision and if you know the customer. Stronger teams is about hiring, onboarding, and training. So strengthening who's currently there, or people you're bringing on. So making that unit tight and effective.
So individually and structurally.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then remarkable brands is about the visual identity and the tonal identity, right? Where the customer, or the brand connects to their community, and it's remarkable in that people speak about it and they want to be excited. I mean, I'm seeing it happen with PMC a lot, where people are excited to share the work that's being posted.
Yep.
And they're remarking on it, right? And that's voice and tone, which is copywriting, but it's also visual identity, and it's also, logo design and colors and the whole thing.
And PMC's reputation. I mean, it's doing
Right.
the brand being the way the company is seen by the outside world,
Right.
not what the company thinks it is of itself.
Right. Or even the product, like transcending the product itself.
Yes. Yeah.
And then the last one is focused communications. So, and focused might not be the best word, but it's there for now.
It implies a lot. I mean, it implies a kind of power, like a laser focused messaging. I think it implies some things, but it might not be the sexiest umbrella term.
And I'm cool with, like, for now it's there, it's live, and I'll always change it. But this idea of communications, like Spider said, that are laser focused, that really cut through the noise, as I've used that term before. I think it used to actually be the homepage of the site. But that's everything from content design on social media to website design and the communications there, even through to product and application design. So that's still communication. That's just more communication on like a buttons and, gestural level, rather than like a mouse, a pointer.
I think focused is a kind of means to an end. Maybe I wonder what the end is, and what the description of that is. Compelling, feedback inducing, like what's the...
It is, I guess we could explore that for a sec. I mean, content design, initially I was like, they kind of serve different functions, right? Like an application is meant to be like efficient communications. A website design, informational, it should like be well organized, and maybe that's the same as application. I'm just going to riff for a second. And then content design can be more cultural, more exciting, a little bit more shareable. So they kind of serve different functions. The intentful communication, like it's meant to just serve the intent of that medium.
Can I pose a challenge to you? Sorry, go Spider. You.
Well, this quadrant. How do you I mean, when you described what status is, maybe that's the answer. But this quadrant, do you have a way of describing the? Actually, no, it wouldn't be the answer. And the outcome of all these things.
Right. That's actually
like the sum total outcome of working with you. Yeah. Or with status, rather.
Right. Yeah. So you mean like in terms of a specific business metric?
A thriving community, which that may imply like money flowing around, or like whatever, like whatever the sort of singular
fast growth, or whatever the metric would be.
Established,
So actually on the work page, there's a headline that says connecting clients and communities. We help clients connect with and bring value to the communities they reach. But that is, I guess, the ultimate sort of vision for status and what it does. Like it's sort of the filter that all the work gets sent through. But in terms of, there's a deeper level to this, which is the business value. And to me, I kind of see it as like that's built during the proposal phase of like, what are the outcomes that we're specifically looking for? Because when you have the customer in your hands, quote unquote, the outcome depends on kind of where the business is at any time, So
Well, helping businesses to thrive is very broad.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
challenge, question.
Mm-hmm.
Everything you said makes sense and is true and is good. I just can see a lot of people saying it. So I can slot someone else in asking those 4 questions, and so it with that, the Michaelness. We talk so often of how we always run out of words with Spider. It's like, what just, it's like, he's Spider. What he does is just Spider. He's kind of a producer of everything, but, and increasingly you're moving into a zone of Michaelness where we're starting to run out of words. And the quadrants that you've described are definitely moving in that direction, but they still sound somewhat. It's not that they're missing something. So the question when I think about the outcome for the business or whatever, when I think about what you relating to a business, the question is, who are you? And then it's like, no, who are you really? And that question is for you and for the business. Who are you really? Like, what are you really? What are we really doing here? That's the Michael piece to me, which is the kind of like, you say you want to sell speakers, but you guys are doing something different. You're selling speakers, but the way you're doing it is different to anyone else who sells speakers. I'm using the PMC example because
I like status. What are you doing really?
Yeah. So that's to me is like a slice of the way that you approach things is like, you always go in, you always, and why that's on my mind is because of where I started earlier, which is don't give people what they're asking for, give them what they need, what they don't, and you could say Steve Jobs, that was his thing, is like, give them what they don't know they want yet or whatever. But truly, like, I think what you're exceptionally good at is drawing out that sort of bedrock, or at least if it isn't bedrock, it's way more fundamental than the things people would say at first blush. So, hey, what do you guys do? Well, we sell mattresses. It's like, really? Like, if I gave you a guy who said we sell mattresses, he's not saying we sell mattresses at the end of the day with Michael. Like, there's just no way that he's going to self-describe as someone who sells mattresses by the time he's done. He will have a
He's helping to reduce chronic disease by helping people sleep better.
Yeah. He will have such a deeper understanding of what it is he does by spending a day with you, or an hour. Might just be an elevator ride because of the questions you ask. So that's like that uniquely Michael approach to things. It's kind of and I'm riffing all of this live, so excuse me if it's clumsy, but it's kind of an insatiable curiosity and an excitement about, like, it's almost like archaeological excitement at, like, you go at it with the toothbrush and you see the dinosaur bone emerging. It's like, holy shit, but I'm just going to keep dusting really gently. I'm just going to do this really slowly and carefully and methodically, and I'm going to dust each side, and I'm going to make sure that I can't come at this with an axe. I can't get my big spade. This is toothbrush work, right? And you just, and where everyone else is tired, we've had a long day. I don't like doing the toothbrush all day. You're just like
45 more minutes. We're good.
You just keep brushing,
we'll do
keep
this
going.
Nice thing afterwards.
Exactly. And we do this bone first and then this bone because of the way they're linked. So it's the curiosity, but also the sort of staying power,
the leadership,
the structure. But the stuff that, there's a lot of people who have structure and a lot of people who have staying power. The way all of these things come together with this kind of
there's a tone to that journey.
A tone. That's it.
I mean, Michael, like, what again? I noticed Michael lighting up at different times. And Michael can end like a debate among people in a business with like a simple sort of framework to understand the core issue and just skip right past the debate and then and get to and that's what a great consultant will do, especially with smaller businesses. There's lots of conversation and sort of argument that may not be actually addressing the thing.
Yes.
And Michael's way of pointing to the thing and saying, no, it's over here.
Or under here, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's something there in like getting to the heart of it. Like you say, going in. It's, having sort of been in the conversation with Michael, preparing for and leading up to a journey with a business like PMC, and then going through it and watching other people meet Michael, like introducing Michael to Maurice, watching, Michael build trust with him and the way Maurice would respond and the other members of the team. It is, I mean, I can't say I've ever had an experience like it, where a team was empowered and so much progress was made that was seemingly intractable in the conversation that preceded it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The unlocking of resources as a result, the sort of profound growth.
Bit of that energy prospecting thing that we talked about with...
all of this to say that the Michaelness, I think, obviously needs to be communicated. I think the quadrant is a means of understanding things. I think that could be a valuable tool in the overall process of it. But I too want like the see Michael's face in the messaging. Feel the essence of that experience of going through it on the inside and on the outside with Michael.
When I spoke earlier about sort of having hopes for all of you, for you it is that sort of, it's funny that you would mention tonight this sort of quandary of being good at things, which comes from being a fast learner and a fast digester of information and being curious. So you know, if I say to you, I'm thinking of getting a bike, you'll go down the rabbit hole of information and research it and think about it logically, and you can do that
beyond
fast.
Motivated to share it.
Yeah. So
the teacher side of it.
Yeah, you have these skills. But when I think of the big journey, and the book, as the sort of indicator of that journey, this sort of stepping into. We talk so often at this table about the commodity engineer. It's like if you were working at East West and I can slot in another engineer in the session that night, then maybe you're not all the way to where you want to be. If you're entirely replaceable by another nameless engineer, then, there's no question you're probably doing a great job. And if you're in the A room at East West, you're probably doing a really great job. But you haven't found your category of one, Seth Godin style. And I think that's what I hope for you is to get to a place where, that's what I want for all of us, is that where we get to a place where we're irreplaceable. It's like you look at Joe Rogan, as Dylan loves to joke about, like, I don't particularly like Joe Rogan, but I acknowledge 1,000,000 times over that he's irreplaceable in that gig. There is no one who can fill that seat. There are other funny people. There are other curious people. There are other well-read people. There may be even other funny mixed martial arts people, but there's no one like him. That seat is only, it's like, it's only he can fill it. And that's that sort of singular voice is what I want for all of us, where we end up in a place where it's like we're fully expressing who we are, where we've come from, what we're curious about, how we're growing actively, but also we just can't, no one can ever imagine slotting someone else into the role, because it just isn't even possible, because you've carved out a role, round peg, round hole, square hole. It's like, well, this hole is a very strange shape and only Michael fits it, you know? So, I think you're very much on the way to this and it's just like, just fucking keep doing it, keep writing, keep
Pouring it out.
pouring it out, keep
Yeah, I mean, even getting to this, we're talking like I got up to page like 100 something, and then was like, I haven't done the work. Like, why am I skipping ahead? A lesson to people that read books and don't integrate the knowledge. I was hit with so many frameworks and ideas in this $1 million consulting book, and like I was just like hungry, right? I'm like flipping through pages, highlighting all this shit. And then I got to page 100 and was like, okay, but I haven't done anything. Like nothing in my life has changed. And I agree with everything that was just said. So I started again.
Yeah.
But this time I just hopped between my highlights and stopped anywhere that was like, okay, fill out your value prop. And that was the first thing it asked. And that's when I had my existential crisis, and that's where I found the multi-potentiality thing and everything. And that's what eventually led to this. So, yeah, I mean, really I'm on page 10, metaphorically and actually. So, yeah, no, I appreciate the feedback. I think that's really the goal, like you said, for all of us. And this is just sort of a little marker along the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's here, it exists. And I think that's important to note that.
And it's live. I love that.
It's live. People can go to it. It might even be changed by the time people go to it when they hear this episode. I strongly believe that.
Sure.
You know, and my dad might add some color to the page.
Don't give Dad the keys.
Yeah, don't give him. Yeah, but you know, it was a really great exercise to just describe yourself and what you do, and
it's vital. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think you're 100% right in that. I just wrote the word more me, or phrase more me, because, yeah, I mean, everything could stand to be a little more us. Everything that we're doing can stand to be more us, you know, and getting there is very difficult. Very difficult.
I mean, you know, you guys all watched me step over that threshold. It's very hard to put yourself out there. You know what I mean? Which is why I never did it.
Yeah.
You know, it's very scary to say what you're really feeling. I've been on a big Jordan Peterson kick this last week, and I watched him talking to Russell Brand, which was kind of interesting and infuriating as conversations with Russell Brand often are. But he was just talking about speaking your truth, and he was like, it's just a thrill ride. It's like an adventure you have. He was like, if you just say what you believe, you know, strap in, because you have no idea where you're headed.
Right.
He's like, this is the ultimate adventure, is just to say what you believe. And of course, that will change over time, and you'll update it. But putting out, you know, I'm blown away by how much saying what I believe or asking questions of you guys here at the table or whatever, how much this is 36 episodes. It's just 36 weeks. It's not that much time in a life, but how much it's helped me, you know, and other people say it's helped them, what we're doing. And I believe them because they seem very sincere. So, you know, the more of ourselves we can put out there, I think it seems to me that that's certainly where my journey is headed. And maybe I'm just sort of putting me on you guys, but I feel for,
I think I could make a more broad statement about the community in general, like the conversations I've had with people over the past few weeks. And we did an art club, co-working club day, it happens in between the art club before and after. It's like right in between that. And so it's full day of co-working. And that's where I was diving into all this information. And you know, I asked everyone, what are you working on? We would talk about it. We might help point to resources, and people would go about their day. And then as it happens with Art Club, like I always ask of other people where they're at, and by the time it gets to me, it's like 11 o'clock. I'm like, I'm fucking tired, man. Like,
Yeah.
and I've noticed that happens in my life quite often. But you know, I was really looking for feedback. You know, I was looking for people like what you just did, but also even earlier on, I was just like, yo guys, like I'm lost here, you know? And part of it's like, you're running this ship of Art Club. People are coming to me for advice. They're asking a lot of questions of things that I know. And there's a little bit of that whole, like, you know, I don't want to express too much vulnerability too often, or not vulnerability, too much. Yeah, I guess you could say that too often, and maybe people lose confidence in the whole thing. You know, I don't want people to feel that way, or too much doubt. But the other day I said, fuck it. And, was just like, yeah, I don't know what I'm doing right now. And two of my friends really showed up on the call, and were just like stepping me through it from a design point of view, really going in. And that really, you know, this obviously wasn't just the book or just me. It was the result of an entire community of people, including you guys, and the feedback you've given over, you know, the last year, the year before. So, you know, I've been thinking a lot about integration and how it kind of fits into our lives. And like, you know, this tagline on the homepage now, like, yeah, I wrote it the other day, but like the word future even was something that was brought up from Ross, like all the way back when we started Status, like 4 years ago, like the idea of Status, you know? So it's like, where do these things come from? You know, it really is the collective. It is a community project, whether you see it or able to draw those connections or not. So it's, you know, not even just this show. I think it's everyone we've connected with, everyone we've spoken to, the communities we've set up. So, you know, and with that, you know, it makes me feel like the business is more than just me, you know?
Very much. How satisfying to see the community you built in Art Club sort of support you when you needed it.
Yeah, it was incredible.
It
was really incredible.
I like the, you know, I'm curious or not, you know, it's interesting to me rather, I should say, that you say you don't want to have too much vulnerability because you're kind of the leader. And, you know, if I had an ambition in my work, it's that I could sort of, which is really what this space is, I could own what I'm good at or what I know with way more sort of clarity and certainty, and then be more vulnerable than I otherwise would be. I sort of almost want to be the freedom to vacillate between, you know, at the moment, maybe I'm a little bit south of the line, a little bit north of the line. It's like I want the freedom to really be confident when I'm right, when I know it, when I've earned it, you know, and to really be lost when I'm lost, even if that means being lost around the 19-year-old guy I'm supposed to be mentoring. Like today, man, I don't know which way is up. I don't know why I make records. I don't know anything about anything, you know, and have that space or freedom, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it speaks of the multi-potentiality of all of us, you know, or the fact that we exist on these different hierarchical spectrums, right? Of like, you could be a master at speaker design and know nothing of cycling, and be in the same room existing with people that are the inverse, you know? Yeah, and that's been a concept I've been thinking about very, very recently, and I feel like you do a great job of that on air. You've been doing that a lot, of just like, you know, geeking out when it's something you know about, and then admitting when you don't. And I feel like, you know, again, I don't know if that was why. I don't know why my brain's making these decisions, but it sees what it sees. It takes in what it takes in. And, you know, in that moment, it was a very you move, quote unquote, you know, like from what I've seen you do, you know? So again, I wasn't saying I'm just gonna be like Rory in this moment. It just happened, but it again is like that influence of everyone. So that's why it's like this page, you might not have ever said anything about the page and still contributed.
Sure.
Yeah.
You know, so thanks for being around.
I plan to continue being around.
Yeah, good. Maybe you can listen to Brockhampton though.
I'll try. Yeah, I saw that John and Matt Rad were psyched about what record this week. I just saw Matt's ad for it because I didn't see the live.
Young Thug.
Young Thug, yeah. So I've got to give that a shot. They were very excited about it. So like I gotta see
Get
what's
a
up
face
with that.
tat after or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll listen. I'll be open. I listened to a Love Supreme on the way down because
Did
of
you?
last week's. Yeah,
Wow.
I listened to half the Pharoah Sanders record, or not half, maybe a bit of it, and the Floating Points record, and then I switched to Love Supreme, and it was really good, really good.
I was thinking yesterday. I was watching Anthony Fantano, who's like this
What a name.
YouTube music reviewer. He's hilarious. He's very, very funny.
Never heard of him.
And he's well respected in like the hip hop community. Like Brockhampton was just on, and they were like, he asked them, they were like, "Do you have any questions for us?" And he was like, "What's your favorite review that I did?" And like all of them had a different one. Like these people like really dig what he does, and he did this series where it's like, these are records I'm not going to devote a whole video to, but I want to cover like 10 records that just came out. And I'm just listening to him speak about these records. And I said this to Angel today during the Instagram Live. Like, he was able to explain what he liked and didn't like about a record in ways that I don't know if a lot of people that are making music could do.
Yes.
You know, I think that's why a lot of artists respect him a lot, because a lot of people can't put that stuff into words.
This is the role of criticism.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it really should be a dialogue between artists and critics.
Yeah.
I think he does a great
involve the
job of
public, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's, you know, initially I went in was like, man, he's like hating on every record, but he wasn't just like, this sucks, next one, this one sucks, 1 star. You know, like it was like, you know, I really love how he was trying to be intentionally like different genres, but there were definitely some genres that stood out and others that felt really weak, and just sort of like, you know, a pale comparison of the original, didn't add anything to it. It's just like, you know, thinking critically basically is what a critic would do, obviously. But I think this critical thinking and critical observation.
It's aesthetic judgment, developing a vocabulary of aesthetic judgment.
Yeah. Yes.
I think audio engineers need that. I mean, they need to have a point of view, understand their taste. And again, like we think about how audio engineers, how does an audio engineer communicate their point of view? Well, it's not like, you know, by endless amounts of distortion or whatever, how you use the tools. It's the artists that are attracted to you. That's where the power is. And so how are they attracted to you? You know, by some feedback loop, some mechanism of communication about what you stand for. What your
Right.
values
And
are, you know?
Yeah, and how you apply that aesthetic judgment, how you integrate it into your work. So it's like,
Yeah.
if you're looking at artists like, it reminded me of a conversation I had with JJ Korosi.
Cora Rossi.
Cora Rossi.
Yeah.
Love that dude. I spoke to him yesterday.
He's great. Yeah.
He had him and his friend Seth, I believe, came by downtown when I was living there, and we went for a walk, and we were talking about aesthetic, you know, about music videos and album artwork. And I was like, how often are you looking at visuals? Like, are you really going in and thinking about how these things apply, or are you only thinking of it like in that moment when it's needed, you know? And we're diving into that, and it just had me curious about how often people are judging things outside of just music for their projects, because video and photo and graphic design are all chief components of this. And so, you know, having a point of view is important, because then you can attract the designers that do that, or, you know, the people, you know, the designer, videographer, photographer, or whatever, you know, you'll be able to determine like, oh, now I know why this dude charges this amount, because they're able to get the thing that I like, you know? They're not just looking for a guy that can shoot a photo or a gal that can shoot a photo. It's like, oh no, like, I love like when there's smoke in the front and like, you know, whatever, these conceptual things or whatever, you know, whatever it might be. Yeah. So I don't know. It makes you kind of appreciate the other consultants that are doing other things.
Yes. I love the idea of choosing a photographer based on whether they have a finger or not. You know, do you have a finger to press the button?
Pretty much
That's
kind of where it's at. Yeah.
You're hired.
Are you free to stand over there while I stand here?
Yeah,
Do you have the time?
Most of the time. Yeah, that is it, dude.
How do you feel about us being near each other but not like really close?
Yeah.
You feel good about that?
Yeah.
All right.
And you're holding this
Are you
like
too busy or are you
$1,000 piece of glass.
Yeah. How's your
mirror.
grip? Have you got a good grip?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That'd be funny.
Yeah, but I always see like looking for a photographer.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's gendered or sometimes it's, you know, race-based, but it's always just a photographer, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, what else about that? Like,
yeah.
do they need taste? Have they photographed before?
It's only marginally more absurd than what we just joked about.
Yeah.
You know, to
No,
be,
it really is.
Yeah.
When I was talking with Lane Banning on the Exploring Creativity Lives, we talked about this idea of like, the more you appreciate other consultants, the more other consultants can appreciate you because you understand what they're appreciating, those nuances. You know what I mean? Like working with Dylan on this project was an excellent experience because he's been a consultant for a long time and he knows, you know what I mean? He knows the push and pull and what's good and what isn't, you know, or, you know, what he would do in a situation to, you know, get the best results from someone. You know, it was a fluid working relationship, whereas some people are like, they want it cheap, they want it quick, they don't really care about all the fluff. Just get me, they need a photographer or they need a logo or something, you know what I mean? And that's kind of a lot of how this work is judged.
That's a shared framework for judgment, maybe not aesthetic judgment, a different domain, but it's the, you know, frameworks. This is sort of what I've been really diving into architecture lately. And you know, one of the aspects of architecture is like, you know, architecture criticism and sort of analysis. And you can learn frameworks for judgment, like, you know, in school or in architecture school or in art history or wherever. And to me, like, that seems like, it seems like something that if you could expose young, sort of aspiring engineers to, it could sort of advance them to the start line, you know, of sort of
other disciplines or the musical equivalent.
Yeah, I mean, in a general sense, like if you had a way, like a way of, if you had a comfort and fluidity and depth to the way you judge food or wine or plays or anything, right? Anything with a kind of aesthetic. You can, you know, there's a sort of it's really, if you have that framework, it's really just a matter of the knowledge base within each discipline. The information that you need to sort of plug in and notice and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, there's a sort of general frameworks, general meaning. Like, so through understanding art, it's a way of understanding human condition, way of understanding yourself. It's system-wide sort of understanding.
Yeah.
And without any framework, just a matter of like, you know, algorithmic influence or online behavior, like how friend inputs from friend groups,
or what you had for lunch.
Incentive. Yeah, I mean, whatever. You know, we're all around the table, you know, agreeing that we should be more ourselves in our work and be more full bandwidth in the world, to be known more completely by the people we love and are close to, the people we serve, the people we like,
Mm-hmm.
acquaintances, to have that sort of a high degree of consistency between our private and public selves, setting boundaries in appropriate places.
Mm-hmm.
I think all of that, art can play a big role in all of that. And your interactions with art. That's the confrontation with art and the attempt to understand, to me, where so much richness in the human experience comes from. It's only through it that you can have such diverse perspective on things, through story.
Yeah, it's a huge...
through visual, through things that can be seen and debated. I mean, I'm on a riff, but when you hear architects talk about belonging and thriving cities and thriving individuals and thriving cities and the roles that spaces play, public spaces, private spaces, what they say about us, what ornamentation on buildings meant, back when that was a thing, what it would say about a business or the people who lived inside, some grand apartment building in an urban center or something. That connection to a place. My question remains: is that something we're losing? Is it valuable? And the fact that we don't develop appreciation of art in any kind of articulate way at a grand scale. Are we not tapping into something that we used to aspire to that we no longer do?
Mm-hmm.
I think there was a time when we aspired to everyone having an opportunity to develop that sort of rich way of engaging in the world. And as we gain, more and more people are being educated and are transcending, poverty and all that's happened in the world. Are we sort of letting one of our primary ambitions go? I don't know.
Interesting question in the kind of context of where we started tonight. The sort of stateless, cloud-based, don't know your neighbor, pouring your heart out to a stranger on the internet, sort of world we live in, where people are constructing avatars, literally, figuratively, sort of they're constructing online personas, choosing sort of increasingly edge case ways of representing themselves, and moving away from shared understandings, sort of atomizing even further than what society has already sort of done, or where we're already at. And I mean, it seems in that context that the value of shared understanding of what beauty is or what form is or what, you just said it better. All of those kinds of things we could study in music or in art or in dance or in.
I almost started to see these conventions in architecture and music and the sort of traditional things that get repeated and iterated on generation after generation, like agreements. They're you hear it, you know what it is. It's a recognizable thing. It's a motif. It's something that you can attach to. And the use of it is sort of like you can see when you understand the grammar of, say, classical architecture, you can see a piece Michael and I, we were in Balboa Park in San Diego, and there's this enormous
theater.
What would you even call it? Yeah, it's an outdoor theater that is a huge organ from the turn of the century, and it's done in a sort of neoclassical style with ornamentation, and there all this sort of like Michael, what did you call it? It's like an image, all the different repeated library, like a
flock,
icon library
A
or
pattern
something.
library?
Pattern library.
Yeah, okay.
And all of there are pillars with a sort of spiral shape going around it. And, Michael was like, all right, Ross, you studied architecture. What's something we're not noticing about this building? And he talked about like the meaning of these pillars to flank the entryways. It's sort of the spiraling, almost like a barbershop pole. It's sort of meant to evoke a sense of infinity and a kind of like connection between the sky and the earth, or like heaven and earth, or whatever level you want to. And so if you know this grammar and you see a thing, you recognize common ground in someone else. And when that knowledge is shared amongst more people, and you have these building blocks and sort of everyone knows where they come from, and look how ingenious it is to put these together that way. It's very different to somebody doing a ground up thing in a completely foreign language to everyone else, which is a sort of more of in architectural terms, modernist thing to do, and almost to desecrate what came before. Even it's a different vocabulary. It's like playing against old forms. But when somebody writes a song from scratch, it's like, oh, what? Now we all have to learn that? It's like, you know what I mean? It's like there are all these great songs we already know that bring us together.
And 1 in a million or 1 in a billion will be a Beatle, and it'll be Hey Jude, and it will be the new song that we all know.
Yeah.
A new sort of cultural touchstone.
But recognizing that these are all little agreements that people have made amongst and we agreed to teach the next generations of architects and whatever, and we think this is valuable to humankind. You can see why people want to preserve that, as opposed to new works of art that aren't built of a grammar. They're not built of all these little agreements that we've had. They're sort of like, I hate to use a word, I don't know how to say it, but egotistical expressions. They're sort of, they're not coming from a communal language. They're coming from a sort of individual point of view.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not saying good or bad on that level. But when we think about like the things that make us feel good, make us feel like we belong, that make us comfortable with other people, like knowing, like a social contract. We walk the streets, when somebody violates a social contract, it's like you notice,
There must be a threshold in a given city or town of those kinds of buildings, like the amount of those, where a break point where you lose a sort of a cohesion or enough spaces where there's this commonality of language or understanding or history or connection or whatever. It's fascinating to think, because I think young artists want to be the bold, innovative, breakaway. You're in that mode of finding your voice. I'm not like my mom and dad. I'm my own. I'm different to these other kids. I'm not like the other kids at school. They play football. I don't play football. Whatever.
Me.
Yeah, you're trying to, So it is a kind of, and yet, many of the greatest pieces of art have some element of that, of breaking new ground. But if it's all new all the time, then we lose something. We lose a resilience. We lose the sort of fabric that holds us together becomes damaged in some way.
The fire hose of novelty. Like, what do you end up with?
And the structural integrity is challenged because there isn't enough commonality or enough shared understanding. Or
that's why like community cohesion is really at the center of all this. It's what helps. What does a community need to really cohere in a meaningful way?
Yeah.
What are the things that help? What are the things that make it hard? You know, what role can art and buildings play in that? Shared artistic experiences and interpretations.
I'd like to learn more about that from someone who knows about.
Yeah, me too.
You know,
me too.
We need to get some sociologists on.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
guys, what do you say we wrap it up?
Yeah.
I think so. I think we covered some ground.
You guys might have to go find John. I don't know where he went.
He had to go.
He's out.
Yeah, he texted. He had to go.
You should kick him out of his own house and say that it's yours now.
I claim it. I'm the king of the table. Well, dudes, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's so much more to talk about. I can't wait for next week.
Yeah, there's a lot. We're in a mode of sort of difficult sounds to sort of aggrandizing.
Challenging.
Certainly challenging and trying to connect some bigger ideas, I think, for us, and stuff we're taking in. So it's intriguing to me, and I'm learning a lot from it.
Hey, Spider, I'm going to the Salk Institute for Biological Studies.
Oh my God. I've been dreaming of, really?
Yeah, bro.
What is this place? I don't know anything
about
it.
Are you going Saturday?
I would wait. I'll wait. Yeah, Saturday.
Because I have this thing. I want to go to every Louis Kahn building and home he ever built and see them. And the plaza at Salk that's like number one.
Well, slow down here, people. First, tell me what the place is, and then tell me who.
Salk Institute. It's a medical school in San Diego, named after Jonas Salk, the inventor of vaccines.
Okay, and why would you go there? Is there a museum, or is it just to see the space?
We're having a COVID vaccine worship party.
That would be the place to do it. So Louis Kahn designed, Louis Kahn, Philadelphia architect, who's no longer with us. He had a very ironic death in the bathroom at Penn Station.
No way.
Like the greatest architectural failure of the U.S.
Wow.
Anyway, totally fascinating character and worth watching the couple documentaries about him. But one of my favorites. He's built these monuments, like giant monuments. It's incredible, beautiful. Very interesting guy. But he designed the dormitory there, which is a west-facing plaza. So on the north and south side, you've got dormitories that all have these like staggered windows that all have a view of the ocean, with a concrete plaza with a narrow stream going toward the coast. And like sort of off the edge, like it's an infinity view of the ocean, and a certain time of year the sun sets right at the end of it. So it's a kind of forced perspective. It's a pretty spiritual space, if you want to call it, and it's a great privilege to live there and work there. And I always wanted to sort of stand there and think about architecture, the thing I wanted to do since I was 5. Contemplate my existence.
Well, I want to know more about this dude. I'm going to watch a documentary. Yeah,
you should. His son. He's one of those men who was more concerned about the world than his family. A sort of citizen of the world, and wasn't the best family guy, and maybe had 2 families in the same town. Maybe
we're hedging on that one.
But his
Allegedly.
his son made this documentary after he passed away, and it's a bit of it's pretty tough at times. Him coping and learning about his dad from the people that worked with him, and he has these very because his dad didn't live at their house. His memories of his dad are very specific to these specific moments. And so to be filling in the gaps with the input from his dad's friends and stuff, and
that sounds
their experience of him.
moving.
He, for free, without being paid, led a campaign to build the Parliament building now in Bangladesh, at the time when they were separating from Pakistan, and there was war, and things got really bad in Pakistan, and his thing was like, they're going to need this building more than ever. Just because there's this stuff going on there doesn't mean we should stop. These people are going to need a space. Like, democracy is going to need a seat, and they're going to need this place to conduct this recovery. And it's incredible. It looks like somebody just dropped the thing from outer space onto this lake. It's like geometric and brutal, and it just looks like it'll be there for thousands and thousands of years.
That vision piece, again, having a vision for what's to come, it's.
And he's a hero. He's a hero in Bangladesh.
Yeah, I can
for
imagine.
this reason, And when you see the people there, what they think of the building and the space and what it means, and how sort of proud they are of it. It's it's pretty powerful. And a lot of his he did the library at Exeter College, which also has these giant this concrete and giant like round cutouts that are like 2 or 3 floors of the library, and you see like the rows of books and stuff. I mean, just the way he uses light, he can create like a delicate feeling in such a brutal, sort of primitive space. He's a real master. And he's done some homes and stuff. And he did one right near where I went to school in New Jersey. That was for sale for a while. I tried to get Tony Maserati to buy it. let me live in it and fix it up. But yeah, Louis Kahn, he's a legend.
Great.
Philadelphia. He taught at Penn,
I want to learn all about him.
Yeah.
Sounds amazing.
There's a new one, Indian guy. He did some buildings in India too, but an Indian guy just did a new documentary, The Lion something. I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah, I'd love to watch both.
Actually, have it right here. Actually, let me just say
Drop it in the thread.
Yeah.
Well, all right, dudes. Let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I gotta take care of some work after this.
Same.
Cool.
I gotta get back to the studio.
Cool, guys.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Love you both.
Yeah, you too, man.
Love the 3 of you. Graham, you too. I see you, bro. Thanks to everyone who is listening, whether that be live and when we release it, or when we release it.
Or 100 years from now.
Or 100 years from now, yeah.
Speaking of that, I gotta close on this. I love the idea that at some point in the future, like 100 or 200 years henceforth, someone will find a copy of that book that you're holding up and be like, the $1 Million Consultant? Like, it's going to be like us saying the $224 consultant. It's like, it's going to sound so quaint.
The $6 trillion Bitcoin?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I guess they already made that joke in Austin Powers, but it's like, it's still funny.
It's the joke that keeps on giving.
Nowhere along the way, like of 5 revisions, did he think, maybe I should up the dollar figure.
Yeah.
Like, that buys like a 3-bedroom house in Pasadena.
Yeah,
Like,
seriously.
it's not that wow.
Yeah.
Anyway. Good night, guys.
All right, folks. Night.
Peace.
Conversations is produced and mixed by Dylan Seals. The Conversations theme was performed and recorded by the Hazelrick Brothers.